Hello, everyone. Today I'm joined by Mr. Abbey Wemimo, the co-founder and co-CEO of Esusu, the leading financial technology company helping individuals save money and build credits. How are you doing today, Abbey?
Doing very well. Very good to be here to engage in this thought-provoking conversation.
Oh, thanks, man. Glad to have you. So for those who aren't familiar, what is Esusu and what services do you provide?
Esusu is a financial technology platform that does three major things. We work with large multi-family landlords, property managers, and investors to report rental data into the credit bureaus to help people establish or build their credit scores. When people cannot afford to pay rent, we then pair them up with zero interest loans, pay directly to their landlord so they're not evicted, and the landlord is also profitable. And the last thing is we essentially capture all the trends we've seen in an aggregated manner to have ESG impact by looking at how many people establish their credit scores for the first time, how many people have essentially now moved from subprime credit scores to prime credit scores. And in doing this, it shows the number of people that can get access to quality financial product. So that's what Esusu does: report rental data, provide affordable zero interest loans, and then leverage that data for our vision to bridge the racial wealth gap.
Interesting. Now, in terms of the rental trends that you just mentioned, what are your observations there, and how are these trends affecting your company's growth?
So when we look at the marketplace today, there are three major things going on. I think rental increase is a symptom of a larger issue we have in society today. I think right now, if you take a step back, we have 8.5% inflation, record inflation rates, 40+ year high that we have to contend with. Number two is the housing stock. Last study I looked at, we have 4 million less homes in the United States that we should have. So you have an issue of demand and supply. There's high demand for housing and there's low supply. And this is just due to the scars of the 2008 financial crisis, where we're trying to be very, very thoughtful about the housing stock so we're not overbuilding. And then the last thing is just given the inflationary rates and the dynamic of demand and supply, that has been driving the increase in rent. It's as simple as that. And with an inflationary environment, it is very expensive for investors and developers to borrow money to build the homes for people to stay in. And the only way they can keep up with the debt they took on to finance this huge development or this large multi-family or single-family endeavors is to raise rent. I think there's an in-between here for us to be thoughtful and find a way to create a win-win-win outcome. And that's what Esusu does. Esusu does not play this, the landlord versus the renter dynamic. We want to create a win-win outcome where the landlord is, making money, the resident is staying in their home. And as a society, we're not solving homelessness backwards.
And you just mentioned the landlord making money. Clearly, that's, the main part of what they're in business for. It's clear how Esusu benefits the renters. Could you go into a little bit more about what makes Esusu attractive to the property owners?
Absolutely. When we report on-time rental data, we've seen that it drives on-time payments. There's a study published by TransUnion, one of the credit rating agencies, that essentially showed that 7 out of 10 renters pay their rent on time if that data is reported. Number two is we offer zero interest loans to folks. At the onset of the pandemic, we're able to raise, millions of dollars in capital, and we have dedicated balance sheets in billions that says, look, this institution usually give money to folks that are homeless, right, already on the streets. And we went to them and so we have access to tens of millions of renters that can leverage this cash to borrow money at a zero interest rate. So we did that during the pandemic, and then that has essentially helped people stay in their homes. So if you think about it, the landlord wins because literally when people take the loan from us, we pay the landlord directly. So that's cash going into their pockets, contributing to their net operating income or their revenue, because now they don't have to contend with high turnover. They don't have to contend with evicting people, which would cause a reputational risk. And then they're doing something that's also accretive to their bottom line.
Wow. So you mentioned raising funds during the pandemic. You recently received an investment. I guess the most recent was about 130 million, which gave your company a valuation of $1 billion, placing it as one of the very few Black-owned unicorns in the US, and globally. Like, how does it feel to have met that, achieved that milestone?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tony. It is humbling. And, when I look back at my story, I grew up in the slums of Lagos, Nigeria. I was raised by my mother and, two sisters, and, lost my father at the age of 2. And what brought me to this country was just the power of education. My mother sacrificed a lot of our salary to afford my school fees to one of the finest high schools in the land. And I immigrated from 80-degree weather in Lagos to negative 22 degrees in Minnesota. And that's how my journey started. So, when you think about that amount of capital, my story is one that beats the odds. It's one of against all odds. I don't take that for granted. It's an opportunity to help propel the vision which we set forth, which is to leverage data to bridge the racial wealth gap. It's the opportunity to help the 110 million plus people that rent in this country, and less than 10% of their data is captured, despite the fact that they send roughly $1.44 trillion to their landlords every year. It's an opportunity to help folks that over the 45 million people in this country that have low credit scores or no credit scores at all, with the average debt in America be $92,000, unlock over $4.1 trillion in capital. So those are the things that really, get me going, and what we think this capital is going to help us do. It's strictly product development, making sure we continue to solidify our place in the marketplace as number one, capturing this important data, and then leveraging that data to better price risk. I want folks in Bronx, I want folks in Brooklyn to get the same product someone that's working in Wall Street is. The only way you make that happen is to tell a story with data to better price the risk that anyone that's going to underwrite them on. So that's what we're doing here at Esusu, and that's what this capital allows us to do, is really unlock a lot of opportunities for folks that have been fundamentally left behind.
Amazing. And what factors do you feel contributed to your business being so attractive to investors?
Yeah, there are a lot of factors. I think one thing we've come out to say is, investing in low to medium income households is not only good, for them, it's also good for the economy. And here's why. It's the stats I talked about. 45 million people don't have a way of being priced or visible right now. The average debt in America is $92,000. We can unlock $4.1 trillion in capital. That's good for the economy. It's good for our GDP. It's good for taxpayers because you actually lift more people up, less strain on our welfare system. And at the end of the day, that's what America is built on. America is built on cheap debt. The question is, do you have access to it? Predominantly low to medium income people, especially Black folks, have been left out of the equation for a very, very long time. So really being unapologetic about that vision of leveraging data to bridge the racial wealth gap is one of the things investors, like about Esusu. The other thing is we dream big. We have the dream of Martin Luther King, but the execution prowess of Jeff Bezos. That's how we think about the world. We want to take people on this continuum of establishing their credit scores, at the same time taking them on this journey of making sure we can unlock quality financial products for them, and one day create wealth building opportunities. So that's really the journey we're taking people on. Investors seize the large addressable market despite serving low to medium income people. It's this new paradigm of capitalism, which we're championing at Esusu, which is justice capitalism. That's what gets them excited.
Interesting. Now, speaking about growth, you clearly achieved phenomenal growth since you started 4 years ago. Could you go into a little bit about the growth of the company since you started and what trajectory you're on right now?
Absolutely. So when we think about from people's standpoints, the company has grown even from last year from roughly 27 people to close to 160 people, all employees included, and contractors. If you think about revenue growth, we've been able to grow roughly 400% year over year. year to date, we're thinking about our revenue from, this year is probably 80% of, from Q1 is roughly 80% of what we did in the entire 2021. So the business continues to outperform. We're not one of those business that raise money and interested in just burning it in perpetuity. We're prudent in our spend and really focused on this audacious vision and mission we've set forth to keep people in their homes and leverage data to bridge the racial wealth gap. And the last bit that's just that's driven our growth is essentially laying the plumbing. We spent the first 2.5 years just building all the right connections to the platforms that will help us give us this scale. So Esusu is a business that's fit for growth. Like every other company, there are areas of improvement. We're all work in progress, and there's all these perpetual things that we can do. But I think we're set up for success. We have a huge tailwind right now in the marketplace, and it's because of what we do. We stand by people, we give them a fighting chance, and we're betting on everyday Americans. And one thing we know is you don't bet on Americans. We always come back stronger and outperform.
Isn't that the truth? When you think of the growth that you've had, I'm, assuming that came with some challenges, some growing pains. What were some of those growing pains that you experienced, and how have they been addressed, or how are you currently addressing them?
Yeah, there have been a lot of growing pains, Tony. We spoke to over 300 investors when we were trying to raise money in 2018, and all of them essentially said no. If you backed us, individuals. I remember one of my former colleagues, gave up buying a home just to invest in Esusu. And I remember people borrowed money just to invest in their dreams. It's those people that keep us up at night, that give us a fighting chance for us to be where we are. And those things keep us humble. Yeah, the $1 billion sounds exciting, puts us in this unique club. But I always make it clear to the team and everyone that $1 billion valuation is a mortgage you have to pay down. And you have to have that mentality and don't get carried away. We have $130 million to allocate. Our job is to allocate and invest the resources rightfully so we can get closer to our mission, vision, and generate shareholder return and make society more perfect. So these are the things that I'm particularly excited about. And one of the pains of raising capital, a story I remember vividly was, we just closed our first client in 2018, a $20,000 client, and still our client today, the University of Minnesota, Crookston. And, we went on campus, we signed the deal. My co-founder and I, Samir, were in, combined over $100,000 in credit card debt. We had sold everything. We had depleted our savings. And the only thing we could do was sleep in a Denny's that night. We had a grand slam, but it was a no-no to sleep in a Denny's. And unfortunately, the gentleman doing his job came to us, around 2 a.m. and said, "Gents, you have to leave. You can't sleep here." We packed our bags and went to the airport, and there was, those massage chairs. That's where we passed the night. And the next day, we flew to San Francisco and we're in a $30 million house close to Mark Zuckerberg trying to raise money. So it was a lot of ups and downs, from getting kicked out of a Denny's and then talking to an investor that lives right next to, Mark. It's just very, very interesting, but you got to stay grounded. That's ultimately the biggest thing. You got to be caught trying. There'll be a lot of no's. This journey is incredibly painful, but nothing worth doing, like my co-founder always likes to say, is worth doing alone. And we fundamentally believe that we're changing the paradigm of capitalism and really trying to make, this country and the world at large more perfect and more equal for folks that have been left behind. And provided we continue to have that mindset and continue to execute the way we're executing, the sky is just a launch pad for us.
That's great. What was it about your co-founder and I guess you and your personalities helped build, what you've grown so far? Like your strengths or your, weaknesses, and like what's his personality? Describe yours, and how did that come together as like the perfect combination to build what you've built?
Yeah, Samir is like my brother. Like I was the only son in my family. We're family of my nuclear family of 3, 2 women, and I was the only son. And Samir was just like a brother I never had, and we love each other so much. He's like my work husband. And one thing we did when we started Esusu was decide to check our egos at the door. 4 or 5 years ago, when we decided to do the co-CEO relationship, it wasn't common. A lot of investors said no to us, even based on that premise, because they expected someone to be the CEO and others to be sort of, presidents or COO. But we took the road less traveled, were contrarian, and said, we're going to do a co-CEO approach because this journey is hard. Making tough decisions on your own, weighs on your mental health, and building a company like this, there are a lot of ups and downs. Everyone sees the glamour. There's a saying, victory has 1,000 fathers, but defeat has not. So you need someone that, can be in the foxhole with you, someone that's battle tested, someone that's been through everything with you. And Samir is that person. I love him dearly. I was the best man in my wedding, and I'll be the best man in his. But our relationship is really, really deep. And, one thing that we always say is whatever we do, this vision we decide to sort of latch onto, it's bigger than us. And once you have that mindset of checking your ego at the door, persevering against all orders, and above all, the work you do is bigger than you, it really changed the perspective. But it's incredibly hard. But I couldn't be doing it with a better partner, a better human being, and someone I have the utmost respect for.
Oh, that's great. And where do you see the company in 5 years from now?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we're cooking at Esusu, and a lot that I know we're going to continue this conversation. But at Esusu, we're taking people on a continuum. Right now we have a society that treats people like they're guilty until proven innocent. When my mother and I came to America, we couldn't get a credit score. We had to go borrow money from a payday loan lender at over 400% interest rate. That's not right. Everyone deserves a fighting chance. Everyone deserves an opportunity to play. Imagine if I ended up working at a gas station and not going to college. We're not going to be having that conversation today. So what we are trying to do is make people be seen and make people be heard, and give an opportunity to get access to what America is built on, which is cheap debt. And the way we make it happen is help people establish their credit scores or build it. And after that, give them a semblance to get access to quality financial products, right? Low interest credit cards, better mortgage rates, good car notes, right? So when we do those things, then, what's going to happen is we start thinking about wealth building alternatives, life insurance, health saving accounts, student saving plans, for the kids, 529 plans. You start thinking about these things, but we need those foundations, and we don't talk about them a lot. I think we get carried away by talking about the symptom of the issues rather than the larger disease, and that's what we're focused on at Esusu, the root causes of what we're contending with in society.
Very well said. So lastly, what advice do you have for founders who aspire to build sustainable multi-million-dollar or multi-billion-dollar businesses?
There are three main advice. Number one is you're enough. I think one thing we've realized on this journey, myself and Samir, is you have to have a level of confidence that you can do it, because if you don't and you don't feel like you're enough, you're not going to show up well to get all these opportunities. So that's step one. Step two is just the recognition that you will fail. Not all your ideas will materialize into something great. There's a lot of failure along this journey, but perseverance matter. Hopelessness is the enemy of progress. You got to have hope. For me, I'm a person of faith. So, I keep God first in everything that I do. And that gives me hope. It gives me a lot of faith to continue to explore the road less traveled, and continue to chart a path to a better life. And then, the thing I would also say is, you got to find someone, a group of people that will be crazy enough to go through the rough times, the good times, and the not so great times with, because there's a lot of ups and downs on this journey. But ultimately, what it comes down to is you got to be caught trying. There's an African American saying that if you hang around the barbershop, sooner or later you're going to get a haircut. No condition is permanent. You just got to keep, chipping away at it, and one day you indeed get that haircut.
Very well said. Very well said. Look, Abbey, Congratulations on all your success. Your story is extremely inspiring. Keep doing what you're doing. And congratulations on your recent nuptials also.
Thank you so much. Thank you. 2020 has been one heck of a year. Immensely grateful to God. It's been a wonderful year, a lot of hard work, but I just got married, the happiest day of my life, and I couldn't be on this journey with someone more incredible. I'm just grateful every day. I get to see a new morning and continue to do the work I do to make this world a more perfect place.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for taking the time to chat, man, and we'll talk soon. You have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Sir.